Okay, I am here with my review of the Path of Exile Balance Manifesto. That's right, I tricked everybody. I tricked Justin. I tricked chat. I have turned this stream into a full-on Path of Exile stream now. That's right. So now that I've got hostages, we're going to go through all of the balance changes that are coming up for Path of Exile. I'm JKing. That's a joke. We like to have fun here. That did go live shortly before the stream went up. I did have a chance to go through that. I've gotten the information that I need from it. I've been looking forward to that since the new Path of Exile League starts this weekend. So yeah, I am back with part 2 of the Dark Tidings set review. My goal is to cover the remaining 4 houses tonight: Shadow, Star Alliance, Unfallible, and Untamed. I'm going to try to get through the houses in about 30 to 40 minutes. But don't feel like you can't comment or anything like that. I do enjoy interacting with chat throughout this. Even though you do distract me and you do slow me down. That is not that much of a deal breaker. So, just doing a quick little recap. The card ratings are not a thumbs up or a thumbs down on a card, because like all things Keyforge, a card is going to be kind of unique to a specific deck. So some cards that may be amazing in one deck are going to feel bad in another. And it's just the card ratings are just trying to give you an idea of how often the card will be useful, or that you can get maximum value from the card, or even when it's not maximum value, how much value can you get out of the card, right? So once again, we've got niche, which is very rarely will this card be useful. You need a very specific set of circumstances that are not likely to occur in an average game of Keyforge. Situational, there may be 1 or 2 times a game where this card can do the thing that you need it to do for maximum effect. That doesn't mean it is a bad card. If you remember, I said Archons Callback was a situational card, right? So it doesn't mean it's a bad card, and in those situations it can still be very good. But typically the opportunity to get maximum value from the card is only going to be there once or twice a game. Role Player is a card that is generally fairly useful. A lot of times it's going to be a proactive card you're going to play out and try to get some value from. A lot of creatures at a minimum fit into the role player category. And in the future, if I were to like remaster this set, I might make a larger differentiation between a good role player and a bad role player. But for now, I'm just going with the system that I kind of slapped together. So a lot of creatures are going to fit into the role player category. A lot of like actions will fit into the role player category. And that's just like cards you are typically happy. You're not really gonna discard these cards when you see them. There might be situations where you have to. You might be forced into discarding them, but most of the time you'll get something from playing these cards, even if it's just putting a creature on the board that your opponent is forced to kill, right? And then standouts are cards that are extremely potent. They're almost always good, and they have the chance to warp the game around them. So there you go. There's a quick little refresher there, and I'll just jump right into Shadows. So this first Shadows card, funny enough, is not one that I think Justin and I opened. I think we only opened one of the uncommon ships. Shadows, I believe, had 3 ships in this set, so we didn't actually get to play with Archon's Revenge. I would probably still put this in the situational, though its effect is quite good. The ships in general I'm pretty down on. I do think that this has a better chance to be good than the other ships, because stealing Amber is just always an effect that you really want, right? Borrow is a role player. You might even call Borrow a situational card. But against decks that have artifacts, Borrow is absolutely incredible. Borrow is probably one of the scariest cards in Mass Mutations, because you could borrow Auto Encoder. And the artifacts in general are a lot weaker and more rare than they were in mass mutations. So I think Borrow's value has taken a little bit of a hit. But you can still get blown out by Borrow, like I did when I played a library card. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. Blatant Thievery is another solid role player, in my opinion. This kind of reminds me of Mug. You could argue that it's a worse Mug because it doesn't do damage. And it also doesn't let you remove Amber from your creatures. It's just enemy creatures. But you're almost always happy to get an Amber from this and enrage a creature. There's a lot of creatures in this set that don't want to fight. They're completely allergic to it. So just being able to enrage an enemy creature is a good thing. Booby Trap is going to be another role player. This is some of Shadow's like best removal in this set. It's at uncommon. But Booby Trap often does end up there are a lot of situations where you end up not being able to get maximum value from Booby Trap because there aren't enough creatures on the table. If your opponent only has 2 creatures and you've got 3, you have to Booby Trap one of your own creatures, which is kind of unfortunate. So you do have to be careful with Booby Trap, but it's got a lot of upside. So Brend is definitely a role player in this set. I hesitate to call him a standout because it takes, I want to say, roughly 2 Shadows cards to kill Brend in this set. You don't have anything like Life for a Life or whatever the card was from our AOA, where you could just sack a creature to do 6 damage to a creature. You don't have anything to that value. You don't have Pawn Sacrifice. You're missing a lot of the cards that just straight up kill one of your Shadows creatures to do damage. They don't exist in this set. You don't have Implosion. You just don't have the stuff that lets you kill Brend as effectively. Bouncing Death Quark, at least in Logos, is a decent way. You can always board wipe, but I imagine Brend is particularly, yeah, you can sack a coins. It's a rare. It's one of those where I always hate having to rely on like other uncommons or rares to combine with an uncommon, because it's not necessarily something. Yeah, you can waste not. There's some solid ways to get around it, but a lot of it is like out of house or higher rarities, right? I mean, you could Booby Trap Brend too, right? But it's going to end up doing splash damage to your own creatures. So there's a lot of like, you gotta work to kill Brend in this set. There's not really any good commons. You're gonna end up using multiple commons to get Brend killed. So. Captain Nobeard, I don't know if we played with Captain Nobeard. I know we did not play with the Evil Twin. I am not sure that we played with Captain Nobeard. We may have had one. I'd have to go back and check. He doesn't stand out in my mind. I'm gonna rate him. I'm gonna rate both of them role players. They're not particularly impressive cards, but it's probably something you're fine with playing. The giving Captain Nobeard's neighbors taunts, that's kind of nice with Brend, right? That forces them. Well, I think it's a, can we enhance? I don't know what happens if I click this, if it blows it up or not. I don't want to mess with my aspect ratio that I got going on, but yeah, so he's not a particularly impressive card. I think that's probably one of the biggest crimes in this set, is that a lot of the rare creatures aren't that splashy, right? They're not, compare Captain Nobeard to, I don't know, like Time Traveler, right? Like, I don't know if that's a fair comparison, but it's one of those things where it's like some rares, or I think a better one would be Tireless Crowcag or whatever. Like there's a lot of creatures that you feel like you can get a lot of value from, and Captain Nobeard doesn't feel like one of those, right? So, yeah, and a lot of these effects, feel like they were designed to be mirrored and weren't actually tested to see if they were good enough, right? Which is kind of a shame. Cement Shoes is almost a standout card. I am going to put in the role player category. It is a great way to take the tide. It's a card you're almost always happy to see. It's a lot like Mug in that respect, that the damage is nice. The 2 damage threshold kills a lot of the problem creatures in the set. So yeah, Cement Shoes is absolutely a role player, very important card in this set. Dead Man's Chest. I don't think we played with Dead Man's Chest either. I don't think we opened one of these. This is probably... This one is probably a situational card, right? This may be one of the worst... Yeah, this may be one of the worst treasures, because your opponent could, like, final analysis their own guys to trigger it. It is an interesting one. It's one that I have a hard time rating because I haven't played with it. Because we didn't open any of these. Getting an Amber and doing 2 to a creature does seem pretty good. And you can control how many creatures you've got on the table, so you can at least control the second ability, right? You can opt not to put creatures on the table if your opponent's got the initiative on it. So it's certainly an interesting one. I like the treasures overall. I think they're good designs. So my impression of this in Dark Tidings is very situational. So it's going to depend on the rest of your deck. There's not good board wipes in Shadows, so you're going to have to rely on like a Crushing Charge or something else from one of the other houses to get a lot of value. Dive Spy Master's role player. This card is a personal favorite of mine. I know it's not very impressive. It's not very powerful. I just love this card. This card's in Confage, so it's a card that I have had some extensive experience with. If it's very fragile, so it dies if you just sneeze in its direction. But it offers a lot of upside, so it's a card that I do really like. So, Early Birds is a role player. It's got 2 Amber Pips. This text is actually relevant because of Unfathomable, but the 2 Amber Pips also makes it get you a lot of Amber. And so that's just fine. This is an example of a card. This honestly reminds me a lot of like some of the rares in Coda, like Destroy All Elusive Creatures or Destroy All Scientists, that had some Amber Pips on them and had some text on them. This is reminiscent of that, but I think putting 2 Amber Pips on it is a nice trade-off. The fact that this is very rarely going to matter. The fact that it's at rare is nice because even though we had a deck that had 2 Early Birds in it, you likely won't have 2 Early Birds in your deck. So that the fact that it's alpha won't screw you up. And you don't have Heist Knight in this set, I don't believe. I may be wrong, but I don't think Heist Knight's in this set, which is another alpha card. You don't want too many alpha cards in a set, because then if you've got multiple alpha cards at the same time, then they just trample over each other. Easy Marks, exalt each damaged enemy creature. This one feels like a role player. Yeah, Heist Knight was in Mass Mutations. I knew it was reprinted, but I didn't think it was reprinted in this set. So, Easy Mark feels like a role player. It might just be situational. I think there's enough splash damage and AoE damage in Shadows that this card is fine. Let's say you play like Booby Trap. If you kill a creature and then exalt 2 enemy creatures, that feels pretty good, right? There's definitely a Shadows theme of like putting Amber on your opponent's creatures that kind of plays with the Sarian theme. So, yeah, rare. I think we've played with a couple of these, but it doesn't like stick out in my mind as like a very powerful card. It's just like solid. You can maybe get some Amber off of it. If it had an Amber Pip on it, I would say that this card would be better. But I think this card's like right on the line between situational and role player. Finch Cloak is a great role player. I love this card. I love this style of Shadows card. It feels so much more balanced for a card to say steal on it than a lot of the Shadows creatures design. So Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is exalting as a mechanic in other houses always works well when you've got other Sarian stuff. So yeah, it's the I wish there was more of this cross house synergy in the game. If I was like put in charge of Keyforge design, I would have more cards that borrowed mechanics from other houses at higher rarities, and more cards that just encouraged cross house synergies in general. Because I think that's probably one of the biggest misses in some of the sets. Because there's some house combinations that just feel miserable, and if there were more synergies between, say, something like Untamed and Sanctum, you wouldn't just think my Sanctum is here to beat up my opponent's creatures and my Untamed is here to generate Amber. It would be like, I want to put +1/+1 counters on my Sanctum creatures so that they're bigger, so that I get bonuses for healing them. Just random synergies like that is stuff that I really enjoy messing. Like, it's just fun. It's because it's stuff you can set up throughout a game. You're subject to your card draw order, but still, discarding cards, milling yourself with like Brobnar with Sound the Alarm so that you can exhume. Like that's the kind of fun thing, and it's not like explicitly written on cards in the set, and so you open up a deck that has that combo, and that's like a fun way to play that deck. And so it's something you get to discover as you go. So yeah. Yeah, so I don't think I talked about why I dislike Sarians so much in this set. Playing with them, even though I like Sarians as a house, and I've enjoyed playing with Sarians in Worlds Collide. One, they're kind of like overpowered, so it's fun to win. But they also do a lot of like interesting things while they're on the table. And in Mass Mutation, Sarians, there were some pretty powerful Sarian decks, but they had like a pretty coherent game plan. The Sarians in this set feel like they're hard countered by the Unfathomable in this set. So in the previous sets, you had very specific weaknesses for Sarians. There are two things about Sarians in especially Worlds Collide that you need to remember. One, Sarians have no answer for artifacts. So if you've got a powerful artifact, the Sarian house isn't answering it. And the second thing is that Sarians were horrendously susceptible to soft removal and not hard removal. So hard removal is damage based or destroy effects, right? So Sarians were just completely allergic to bounce effects, to exhausting, to shuffling them back in the deck with like Lost in the Woods. All that soft removal style is very good against Sarians, and Unfathomable is nothing but soft removal. So you have one house in this set that just completely hammers Sarians in this set. And I'm willing to bet Unfathomable does pretty well against Sarians in the other sets as well, just because the style of playing 4 dinosaurs, letting them sit on the table, and using their effects. Oh no! Yeah. I didn't like rush the end of the stream, but I was definitely trying to like stay aware of the time. But that was like a thought that I had earlier today, where I was like, oh, I had like a whole train of thought for Sarians that I meant to go on that I don't think I got to. So yeah. I enjoy the Sarians. It's just so it almost feels like I've always said that I felt like the Sarians and Star Alliance that were in Worlds Collide were designed outside the game and then just put into Worlds Collide, and they were put in at a power level that people weren't expecting. They were just better than a lot of the stuff around them. And it feels like Sarians in Mass Mutations had like random cards taken from them. So as to like try to bring them more in line. And so that's why a lot of Sarian decks felt bad But there's still plenty of powerful ones, and it feels like in this set, not only did those cards get taken away, instead of adding like new interesting cards, they just kept taking more Sarian cards away. So it feels like you're missing some of the base components that made Sarian decks so consistent in Worlds Collide. They were arguably too consistent, but in Dark Tidings, it just feels like a random scattered grouping of cards most of the time whenever you open a Sarian deck and play with it. So anyway, Sarian sidetrack over. Back to Shadows. Finishing Blow is a role player card. It's very good. Would be better if there were more damage icons in this set. So all the stuff that relies on like damage on creatures is a little bit more difficult to pull off, because there's just not as many cards that are doing damage. But it's still a powerful effect. You get to kill a creature and you get to steal one. It's a good ability to get you back in the game. Francis the Economist is a role player. Justin and I defend Francis's Economists, Frankie's honor quite a bit on stream, just because sometimes you want to give your opponent Amber. Sometimes you can force them to take Amber so that your attacks will they'll hit that threshold that you need to actually tax them. So yeah, Francis has got a lot of versatility. He wasn't awful in Mass Mutations. He wasn't amazing, but in this set, I think he's totally fine. It can be a while before you generate Amber in this set because there's a lot of actions that just don't have Amber pips on them. So being able to force your opponent to have Amber so that you can steal it is nice. So Freebooter Faye is a role player. I don't quite call her a standout, but she is very good. I would look for her highly if I was playing Sealed. This is a swell card all around. A little bit larger body for a Shadows creature and doesn't have elusive, but a Reap effect, the steal one, is just really good. I do like that it's conditional though, so your opponent has a chance to make you have to pay for this effect. You always have the initiative to take the tide, so that she can almost always steal one if you want to. The Evil Twin Freebooter. Let's see if the time is hot before. So she has to fight. I think that's probably just strictly worse, in general than the other one, but it's still fine effect to have. Gas Pipes is a role player. That's definitely a card that has overperformed. Like when you read this card, you think it's not very good, but it has actually overperformed for us. And I believe Gas Pipes is the originator of the Punch of Fish and Die meme. So for that, he gets a special place. So Hand Cannon, this is a baffling card because it's supposed to play off of the other effects that move stuff off of it, or like your effects that are putting Amber onto your opponent's creatures. It's like a roundabout way. You could say it's stealing with some extra steps. The skirmish, honestly, on this card is what makes it a fine role player, because you can put it on a larger creature and it suddenly has skirmish, and now you don't care about the rest of its effects. If you were playing against like Odoak the Patrician, you might care about this card. So this is one of those like baffling, like why wasn't this in Worlds Collide? To give Shadows a way to deal with Odoak. I like it when you've got like you have to make decisions in counterplay, right? Like I enjoy having that in card games. But yeah, it feels like Hand Cannon is trying to help you solve something that isn't an issue in this set. So it's a fine card. Hart Simpson is a role player. This is a card that has you read Hart Simpson and you think it's a situational card, maybe even a niche card, but you always have there's like tons of ways to damage him in Shadows. You can shoot him with your own cement shoes. You can do other stuff. So he's got a card that's got a lot of upside, I think. So plays way better than he reads. I'm still baffled as to why Hart Simpson was one of the earliest spoiler cards for the set because it's not like a flashy card to read. Hard Simpson, Evil Twin is fine. I think we have played with this card. Still a role player. Still does fine. Hobnobber and Hobnobber's Evil Twin are I will put Hobnobber in the standout category, and I'm going to put Hobnobber's Evil Twin in the role player category. All of the Evil Twin stuff kind of like guides you in the direction of reducing your opponent's amber. We had that deck that had the Evil Twin Chelonia and Hobnobber, and they worked together amazingly. You play a couple creatures, you make them lose amber, and then Hobnobber steals what they have left. And then the regular Hobnobber is just a card you have to kill if you want to forge a key. It's an effect that says steal 2 on it. And I know it's conditional, but guess what the condition is? Your opponent is trying to forge. That's a great time to steal 2 amber. So he's got a body that is easy to beat up, but it's a card that demands an immediate answer. Hornswoggle's a fine role player. This card would actually honestly be insane in previous sets, and it's only okay in this set. You don't have cards like Spike Trap, you don't have Long Fused Mines, you don't have a lot of the stuff that has like a really powerful usability on it. Library card is the one that comes to mind. Maybe Mobius Scroll, I guess, but so far we really haven't seen that many artifacts that are worth hornswoggling, but it serves a purpose. So Jackie Tarr, I want to call a standout in this set. This is a creature that Justin and I have killed a lot of, and he often says reap, destroy a creature. So Jackie Tarr is one of my favorite Shadows creatures in this set. It's got a fragile body, but he kills. If we went through and we counted, I'm willing to bet Jackie Tarr kills 95% of the creatures that we've seen. 6 damage, smokes virtually all the dinosaurs, with the exception of like large beast ones and like Venator Altum, and 6 damage also puts a hurt on the vast majority of Sanctum creatures. And if you're killing Sanctum and Sarian creatures, then you're killing creatures in other houses even more reliably. So even 1 damage is fine. It's a reap effect. So I think at the worst case, Jackie Tarr is like a Mac the Knife. Maybe even better, because you get to a damage with your reap. Whereas a lot of times Mac the Knife's having to choose between killing or like doing the damage or reaping. So, and if you get to kill something, you get an amber too. So yeah, Jackie Tarr is awesome. Koalop is a role player. This card has got a lot of upside depending on the rest of your deck. Combines very well with Cleansing Wave. You don't want to play it against your opponent if they have a Cleansing Wave, but yeah, it's fine. It gets rid of a lot of the smaller problem creatures in the set. Combines well with like your Hard Simpsons. It just does good stuff. Little Nif is another example of another role player. Little Nif is better if your deck has got Sanctum Rosarian, the aforementioned Sanctum Rosarian creatures, just some bruisers in general. You don't mind deploying Little Nif so that you can set up some big fights later. Looter Pillage is an excellent role player. You're most of the time going to play it for the Steel 1, but there are some instances where the Capture 3 is better. So yeah, SoundCloud rapper Little Nif. Mac the Knife, he's a role player. He's just a great card. He's been great in every set he's been in. You're usually very happy to see him. He generates a lot of amber. A lot of times demands an answer. Master Mindy's a role player. We've played with her several times, and I don't know how many times she's actually stolen anything, because we go out of her way to kill her. So there's something to be said about that. Like having a creature that your opponent is forced to remove. I'm willing to bet her effect is, or she's probably better in this set just because the removal is so much worse than she was in Mass Mutations. I don't think she got to do anything in Mass Mutations because so much damage was floating around, so many damage pips and whatnot. She died to everything. This set, it's a little bit harder to kill her. Master Plan, I think this card is a standout card. Obviously, if your opponent's got a Hornswoggle, it feels a lot worse, or a Borrow. But Master Plan is a very, very strong card, and it can set up some interesting situations. It's like delayed Shadow's phase shift. So that is to say, a pretty good card. Miasma Bomb's a role player. I don't know that we've actually gotten to play with that many Miasma Bombs in this set. We played with a lot of Miasma Bombs in Mass Mutations. And Miasma Bomb was like a very key card in like rush matchups, which a lot of Mass Mutation decks were very fast. I don't know. Miasma Bomb is probably taking a hit in this set just because the format's a little bit slower. But having the option to delay is nice. So Mole is absolutely a niche card. I think most of the time this card is going to be blank. There will be instances where this card can maybe win you a game, but it feels like there are other effects for taking Amber off your opponent's creatures, like say killing the creature, that are just better. So it's just it's an interesting card. It feels like it was designed to answer Worlds Collide Sarian creatures, right? They've got like a Grimlockus Dux that's exalted 6 times and has like a Scutum on it. And you just like put a mole on it. So yeah, I don't know. It's such a weird card. Monty Bank is situational. You really got to combine stuff with him. It's the Evil Twin one, and I don't think we played with, but man, I'd be scared to. You have to exalt it twice. Yikes. 1 toughness, 1 power, like, I don't know, that's real. I'm super nervous, right? You have to, I don't know, this one's scary. That's a scary prospect to play this one. I know removal's worse in this set, but I don't know, man. So most of the time we play Monty Bank naked. You don't want to exalt him. And then you can combine it with, like, say, a Looter Pillage to get the Amber onto him. Or if you've got some capture icons from some enhance, that I think is the best case scenario for Monty Bank. But so that like means he's pretty situational. So I think most of the time Monty Bank's going to end up in a niche, though. He's not going to be useful every game, and you're not going to have many opportunities to use him. Mug is a role player. Just an amazing card. It's been good since Worlds Collide. Old Bruno's a role player. He's got a lot of upside in this set. I think he was actually insane in Mass Mutations because the Sarian was generally better, and you had cards like Prefectus Ludo you could combine with Old Bruno. So I think Old Bruno's taken a hit in this set, but you can still combine him with some Sarian stuff and get some neat stuff done. The One-Eyed Willows are nice role players. You know, it's wild that Bat Drone and Umbra, like, she's those cards if you have the Tide. So you know, like, Umbra was a card that died a lot and very rarely got to steal Amber, so it's crazy to me that you have to have like the Tide to make her as good as an Umbra. And sure, she gets elusive, but I don't know, she's fine. A lot of times your opponent has got like other stuff they got to do. I really like the Evil Twin one. Both of these, you know, do have a pretty good role to serve. Ransack is a role player. The better you are at ransacking, the more you might like this card. But I think this card is generally most of the time steal 1, sometimes steal 2. Occasionally you'll hit something insane, but I think most of the time it's only going to steal a couple Amber, and that's fine for a card. Honestly, you don't. If every card in your deck said steal 1, then you would probably win most games, right? Ransom, this is a situational, maybe a niche card. I don't know. I don't know about this card either. It's rare. This would feel like a really bad rare to open. It feels blank most of the time. It might as well just remove the creature. But you've got cards like Wipe Clear that can actually get rid of this card. So, I don't know. Super weird. Ring of Invisibility is a good role player. You know, this card, you get very sometimes you'll get more value out of it. It's better on larger creatures. So this is like yet another Shadows card that is better on not Shadows creatures. A lot of your creatures are going to have elusive. Some of them may already have skirmish. Sometimes Shadows creatures have elusive and skirmish. So, you know, but this is really good on, say, Sanctum creatures. Yeah, put it on like a Bulwark. Give Bulwark elusive, make him even more of a pain for the opponent to get to. Putting it on taunt creatures is pretty good too, because like a taunt and elusive is very annoying. That's a lot of fights that a creature like that can soak. Sack of Coins is an awesome card. I don't want to call it a standout, but it's definitely a role player. There's a lot less burst in this set. So I think a Sack of Coins is slightly worse than it was in Mass Mutations. Mass Mutations Sack of Coins was awesome. And in this set, Sack of Coins is still good. It's been a good card forever. So Safer Sorry is not a great card. I want to put this in the situational category. The archive any number of friendly creatures honestly feels like it would have been better in Mass Mutations. You don't have nearly the number of play or enhancement icons that you did in previous sets. So dumping like a bunch of mutants into your archives while you had like a Dark Amber Vault or you know, just crazy stuff like that could have been really powerful. So it's just it doesn't feel as good in this set. Safer Sorry could be a setup for, say, Epic Quest. Excuse me. It could be a setup for Epic Quest. But the amount of damage that this card does is going to vary wildly. So you could also use Safer Sorry for, say, Ruins of Arcanus. Yeah. So it's got some upside. That's which is why I'll put it in the situational category. There are definitely times where it can do something crazy, killing your own Brend, Orion. Yeah, very good option. So yeah. And it's another one of those cards that like relies on the amount of amber that your opponent has. So like Francis, for instance, can give your opponent the key piece of amber that you need to make sure that your Safer Sorry works fully. Scooped is very good. This is an excellent role player. Scowly Caper is back. I don't think we've actually played with him in this set. He's probably better in this set than previous sets because the removal overall was so much worse, right? So probably totally fine. Sea Urchins are excellent. The Evil Twin one is a standout. Steel 2 is crazy. It's just play, right? So yeah, Scooped. It's honestly a shame that like there isn't more, that Mars isn't in more sets, because Mars liked having your opponent capture amber onto their own creatures too. So you could have like that Shadows Mars crossover where they're both putting creature amber on the opponent's creatures, and then you know you're killing them to get that amber. So and then regular Sea Urchin is just fine too. It's a nice role player, but the Evil Twin Sea Urchin, just Steel 2 is nuts. Secret Needle's a role player. This is a reliable source of damage. It combines a lot of things in Shadows pretty well. You've got a lot of low power creatures, so you can recycle them. You obviously don't have Rad Penny, but so Secret Needle is slightly worse than it was, or significantly worse than it was in Mass Mutations because of Rad Penny. But you got plenty of other targets to get some damage with. So Shoulder Id is a nice role player. Shoulder Id actually combines a lot of cards in this set in an interesting fashion. You got Static Charge, you got Infighting, you got Stir Up Trouble. You got a lot of cards where it's like trying to force Shoulder Id to do damage to other creatures. So you got some combo potential, and it gives you some play around potential too. I think a Shoulder Id is actually much better in this set than it was in Mass Mutations, and it was okay in Mass Mutations. It wasn't amazing. So Smiling Ruth is a niche card. There are only 2 times a game where this effect could happen, so you have to have Ruth in play and also want to take a Shadow's turn for Smiling Ruth to be good. So Smiling Ruth was in Coda, and I do not know if we ever activated Smiling Ruth in Coda. So I'm not sure that we would be able to activate her in this set either. Just unfortunate, because you would think a character that's got like scars on their mouth would be have a crazy good effect. And while taking control of an enemy creature seems like a good effect, it just doesn't in practicality do anything. You don't ever really get a chance to do it. So Stirrup Trouble is a nice role player. Does a lot of work. It's just very good. It makes your opponent position correctly, and you can punish when they don't position correctly. And you can even remove creatures strategically, so that Stirrup Trouble does do a lot of stuff. Here are the other two ships there, Code Red from, I mentioned that there were 3. The Submersible, I'm not sure that we have one of these. It looks like a role player, but I don't know, it's very conditional. Could be situational. Might even be niche. I mean, it gives you an amber. I'm gonna go with situational. The problem is your opponent can always take the tide, so that way they can get rid of your elusive. A lot of your creatures are already going to have elusive. It says each friendly thief creature. And I don't even think there's like the Star Alliance thieves in this set. There's like 2 Star Alliance thieves. I don't think either of those were reprinted. And then the Sanctum Thief was not reprinted. So give me 1 second. I have to respond to a text unprofessionally in the middle of this. Okay. The Flying Spectres is a role player. It's honestly probably more situation. I'm gonna go with situational. Yeah, I can't even get through one night. So the Flying Spectre here, very situational. I think you're going to be able to use this maybe once a game. I think we had a game where it did a lot of work, but the fact that it explodes means your opponent always has like an escape valve for it. The best case scenario for it is if the opponent already has the tide and you play the Flying Spectre. That is when you want to get that deployed, so that way it's waiting in the wings, so that you can use it. So we've played with this ship quite a bit, and I think there's maybe 1 or 2 games that we have on the whole time where this ship has had a chance to steal more than like 1 or 2. So not amazing. Shadow Council I'll put in the role player category. You got a little bit more. You got some random battle line manipulation in Sanctum, so this might be able to pair with Sanctum fairly well, so that you can like move it around your battle line. The Action Steal 2 is just a creature that's got a huge amount of upside, if it does ever actually work. So Trickle Down Theory is a standout in my opinion. This is a card that has gotten better the more we've played. It's just very good. The fact that its ability is Omni makes it very good. Works really well if you're taxing, and the just play and raise the tide is nice. Walk the Plank is a role player. Whisper's a role player. Walk the Plank, you almost always just want to steal the 1 anyway, so you never really feel bad that you're not killing a creature. You're always kind of happy to steal 1, and then worst case scenario, you get to kill a creature. So yeah, Whisper's effect is fine. You can always just reap with it. A 3-power elusive is not easy to remove in this set, and having the ability to kill a creature is good. Like this has its Whisper's effect was good in Worlds Collide, because there were just like a lot of annoying creatures to get to, and so Whisper just gives you a chance to answer those. So it's definitely nice. Widespread Corruption, I'm gonna call this a role player because it really depends on your deck, but Widespread Corruption is a very interesting card, and it completely changes the face of the game. So, yeah, it's a card I would put... Eddie is going crazy. I would put this in the same category as Kixelstone and Heart of the Forest, where it alters the face of the game based on how you were playing it. So yeah, it's a card that if you haven't played against this card, it can be difficult to underestimate what it's doing to the game. But some decks are better equipped to work with it than others. So yeah, I will take a quick breather right before we jump into Star Alliance. So I am going to step away for just 1 second, and I'll be right back. So. All right, sorry about that. Justin just got home. He's returned from whereabouts unknown. So I'm going to keep powering through this. So we're back on for Wednesday to get back into games. Okay, so moving into Star Alliance, we've got Scott Skaz, 5C077. Scott's a good role player. It's a card we've actually got to play with quite a bit, and we very rarely use the +1/+1 counters on it, but that at least combines with the Untamed +1 counters theme that's in the set. So we have not had a chance to play with Evil Twin Scott here. Destroy another creature with the same power. Wow, that's a pretty good effect. Yeah, I don't know. I'd still give the edge to the regular Scott because you got to do some manipulation to get this to work. But if you do, that's an awesome effect. Reap, destroy a creature is really good, right? So yeah, yeah, it looks kind of interesting. And you could do some manipulation with like Light of the Archons and stuff like that. So, all right, Agent Septia. The one thing to note about this is that the effect is not mandatory. Sorry, the effect is mandatory. So if the tide is high and your opponent has no creatures and you reap with Agent Septia, you have to stun one of your own creatures. Now, with that said, I'd still think Agent does a pretty good job in this set. Fills a very specific role. Reap and stun, it's very Unfathomable-esque, so it's a nice creature control piece. Away Team is a role player. It's a big enough body so that even if you don't get the advantage of its text, that it can at least contest the board. So creatures that can at least contest or always get like a slight advantage, even if their text is slightly less relevant. Ambervac is an excellent role-playing card. Play and Raise the Tide is very good. And then capturing 2 really forces the opponent to want to play for the tide or deal with the creature that has this on it. Yeah, this we're always happy to see Ambervac around these parts. The fact that it is common combines well with the Biome Discovery. That's why I still think Star Alliance is the best house in this set. Just because the power level of cards that it has access to is very high, in my opinion. Biome Discovery, honestly, you're typically more happy to play this to raise the tide than you are for its actual effect. Though there are some random situations where its effect is totally fine. So The Book of LEQ is we have not played with it in this set, but we have played with it in previous sets. This is a card where you swing for the fences. So yeah, this card can be very good. It does combine with Biome Discovery, so you can look at the top card and make a more informed decision. If you've never played with this card is worth playing with to see how powerful it can be. It's a IEQ. I think it's LEQ. I think this is a lowercase L. It's like backwards. All right, and then CR Officer Hawkins is crazy. This card is a standout. Very powerful effect. It's a deploy effect. I thought it was an I as well. Yeah. So Hawkins is he's very good, and the evil twin one is fine too. The edge probably goes to the to Hawkins, but to the regular version, not the evil twin one. But Amber Control is always nice, and Amber Control is kind of at a premium in this set if you're not Shadows. So yeah, Hawkins could generate a crazy amount of Amber. Val Jericho is a standout card. She always has been. If they keep printing her, she always will be. She's a card that completely changes the face of the game. Yeah, just very, very good. This is another card that if you never had a chance to play with, treat yourself. Go find a cheap Val Jericho deck and buy it and just play. And mulligan until you get her. She's just a really fun card. Keyforge is a standout. This card is absurd. This card says your opponent cannot win the game. Like, wow. This is the card that Heart of the Forest honestly should have been, right? So yeah, Keyforge is very, very powerful. It's always... Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, how many standouts in a row have I talked about in Star Alliance? Star Alliance is just jam-packed full of cards that are always good to play, have huge upside. Like, and the downside, like the worst case scenario, they're fine. Like, it's just like an average card, right? So Cheetah here, I'm going to call these role players. These are like a little bit of a departure from the previous robots that are in Star Alliance, because they had to be played as you could have won with it. Yeah. Keyforge is an incredible card. You have the first opportunity to forge the key, because it goes away and then you go to your forge a key step, right? So yeah. But yeah, the cheetahs are a little bit of a departure from the previous robots where they had to be played as enhancements. So these have like a battle line effect. And so I think they're fine. They're not amazing, but they give you some interesting... They're better than, like, say, Lamendra, right? The body is big enough so that way they don't die to random removal or assault, or, so yeah, it's a totally fine effect. Your opponent can always turn it off with the tide, but yeah. Colonist Chapman, I don't think we played with Evil Twin one. Capture all amber from each player. Wow. Situationally, that's very powerful. Geez. He is a miasma. Yeah, because Scott was the same way, right? But Teresa is an enhancement. Sorry, is an upgrade, and the other one isn't. So Colonist Chapman here, that's a super powerful ability. This is better if you've got like a key cheat. You play your key cheat, you forge, then you play Colonist Chapman and capture all amber. So that's a really powerful ability, with like the caveat that there are multiple times a game where he's just terrible to play. So that's super interesting. It's very situational, super powerful in that situation, but you're not going to have many chances to do it. Colonist Chapman here, he's fine. Your neighbors gain an extra amber. It's good. Yeah, he's a good role player. Hings and Gross are role players. They've got a lot of upside. And the fact that they go get each other is crazy. I'm willing to bet a double Hings and a doubles Gross deck, if they can come in doubles, those decks are probably bonkers to play because you just put a bunch of them on the table in one turn. So yeah, these cards are very good. I don't know if Justin and I have gotten back around to playing the decks that had Hings and Gross in them. I think we had a couple of them. So yeah, if the other isn't dead, and that's fine. So it's like the upside, the worst case scenario for this card is that you have like both of them in your hand. You play them and one of them dies. And then you're like, oh well. Right. But it was like any other creature that you played in that situation and they died. But the best case scenario is that you can play one of these, go get the other one out of your deck, and then play the other one, and then get value from them. Like they combine with Triska, right? Yeah, exactly. Triska or Unity or Discord. They combine with those, right? So you know, there's a lot of like synergies in the house where they just get to do sweet things. So yeah, they have a lot of upside. They're very good. But they just basically turn into the Hings, especially is just like, hey, you got to kill me because I'm going to reap and I'm going to draw infinity cards. So Drixker's fine. I'll put Drixker as situational. There's only a couple times a game where the ability is going to matter. But I think Drixker's ability is good. And it's going to be better in some decks. So I'll say he's situational. But typically, you know, you get some good effect from Crash Muldoon is great. As he gets you an Amber immediately. And potentially even more, can do even more. He's a deploy effect, so you can draw him after you've played your Hings and Gross. There's a lot of deploy in the set, so that's like another reason why Hings and Gross are so awesome, because you can just deploy creatures in the middle. Tabor is a role player. I'm hesitant to call him a standout, but Tabor is a creature that is in that must kill category. He won't quite take over a game by himself, but he does a pretty good impression of winning a game if you get to use him multiple times in a row. Dive Pod is a niche card. I do not understand this card. This card is baffling. This card was printed in the same set as Ring of Invisibility, and it is worse. It feels like they wanted to put this name on a card, and then they just slapped some stuff on a card, and then they never went back and looked at it. They wanted something to matter with like the tides, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't even have a pip, right? Like, it's just a baffling card. This is the worst Starlines card. Fortunately, it's trapped at rare. But that's my this goes back to the rares in this set are slightly less there's like a lot of unexciting rares in this set, right? Could you imagine a deck that had like Dive Pod and Mole and, you know, Captain Creasage? That's like your 3 rares in the deck. Just like your Captain Creasage is turning off like your Captain Creasage can't have Skirmish or Elusive at the same time depending on the tide. I don't know. It's wacky. It doesn't make a lot of sense. A Gung is a standout. A Gung is crazy. The baseline for this card is he's good and has to die immediately, and he scales up from there with all of the house mattering effects that are in Star Alliance in this set. Yeah, a Gung is, and he's common too. It's just so crazy how much Amber the Star Alliance commons can generate in this set out of nowhere, out of seemingly nowhere. Driscoll is a fine role player. This honestly, I feel like most heal effects should come with some sort of Amber gain attached to them. So Driscoll's totally fine. And Countersuit is a standout. This card is so hard to deal with. I'm shocked they reprinted this card. You have to like jump through so many hoops to kill something in an encounter suit. So Exploratory Craft is the best of the ships. I'm going to put it at situational still. It is the ship that has the highest upside. So yeah, you get to draw some cards, and it like lets you use creatures from your other houses. So Exploratory Craft is fine. I still think there's only going to be a handful of situations a game where you'll really get to use it and get some value from it. So yeah, encounter suit's bonkers. Forcefield's a situational card. I'm sorry, is a role player. You get to put this on a creature, and your opponent can either kill it immediately or spend the rest of the game having to try to deal with it in a disproportionate fashion. Forging Alliance is a fine situational card. There's only going to be a handful of times a game where it might even work, but it can definitely win you a game out of nowhere. Any key cheat is welcome. Plus, it combines with Diplomatic Gung. Our goal from this point forward is to see how many cards combine with Diplomatic Gung. Okay, so Forging Alliance does. General Order 24. This card is a role player. This is better in your creature light decks. Decks where you don't care if your creatures die. This is pretty good, and it's good against board heavy decks. But there's a lot of situations where if you're like slightly behind on the board, you can play General Order 24 and just kind of hose your opponent. So we've got another card here that works with Diplomatic Gung, and Grand Alliance Council is the best board wipe in the set, in my opinion, bar none. This card is just incredible. It gives you so much agency over how you kill the opponent's creatures, and when you combine it with Diplomatic Gung, means, would I say it's the best in the game? I don't know. It's very good. It's actually crazy how good Grand Alliance Council is. I don't think it's a mistake that one of our 6-0 decks, I think our only 6-0 deck in the tournament so far had 3 Grand Alliance Councils in it. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but I think that deck went 6-0, and I don't think any other deck has at this point. Yeah, it's an incredible card. So Lay of the Land is a great card. Situational, not situational, but just a great role player. Yeah, just a very powerful card. The worst case scenario is you get some information for your next turn, which is never bad. Like playing this at the start of your Star Alliance turn will let you know if you got the option to play a card from one of the other houses, right? Let's say your hand is like 4 Star Alliance cards, and then one of each of your other houses, and you have a chance to play one of those cards, and you're not sure which one you're going to play. You can Lay of the Land, look at the top of your deck, see what that's going to be, and then play like the other house that you aren't drawing. So on your next turn, you can take that third house option and play all of those cards, right? So yeah, Lay of the Land is just very good. Gives you a lot of information, gives you a chance for even more explosive turns. So Kirker's a nice role player, very defensive creature. He's in that category of annoying taunts to deal with. The taunt creatures that we've seen so far that are very annoying to deal with are Kirker, Shoulder Id, and Lapisaurus. Colonist Chapman had taunt, but he's only like a 3 power. Colonist Chapman has taunt as like a balancing concern. That way your opponent can always attack him. Hey, Sky Jedi, how's it going? But there's so many just annoying taunts in this set, and Kirker's right on that list. There are very few creatures in the set that can attack him and live, and I think they're almost all Sarian. Volmart is a nice role player. Volmart is noticeably not Garcia. Garcia is so good, and Volmart does a pretty good impression. So if your deck is good at controlling the tide, then Volmart is like a slightly better Garcia. Honestly, I like having the ability to manipulate how much you're taxing by, and a lot of times it feels like taxing for 2 is actually better than taxing for 3, because you're more likely to tax them for the 2. A lot of times the +3 just stops them from forging, and then they and then they go ahead and forge for 6 anyway, right? So yeah, Scientist is nice, right? Because that lets you hit with the rooftop laboratory, which is good. Volmart's a fine card. Like your opponent really wants, it's incentivized to kill it. And it's great that it's back in the play fight reap zone, right? That's another thing about Star Alliance in this set. In the previous set, you didn't have nearly as many play fight reap effects as you did in this set. In Worlds Collide, it felt like every Star Alliance creature was a play fight reap almost. But in this set, they do a pretty good job at getting their effects immediately. Or in mass mutations, especially the mutants, for instance, none of those guys had play effects for the most part. Kirby only really being I think the only one, and whichever ones got reprinted from the previous set. Light of the Archons is a good role player. A lot of upside on Light of the Archons, combines well with Urian, as we've seen. And there's some like fun Voltron stuff that you can do. Make It So is a situational card. I almost want to call it niche, but we've missed with this card so many times. But one day, one of us will draw like 3 cards from Make It So, and it's going to be awesome. It has a chance. It can combine with some other cards in the set, and it's got to do some wild stuff so that it isn't just Archon's Callback, right? Where you play 4 cards, play Archon's Callback, and then you're right back up to 6 anyway. So I think most of the time the correct call is to say Star Alliance, just so that way you can play any extra Star Alliance that happen to be on the top of your deck. Matter Maker is a card I don't think we played in this set. We had several Matter Maker decks in Mass Mutations. Matter Maker is a fun card. I do have to call it situational. It is a really cool card. The other upgrades in other houses in this set aren't nearly as interesting as they could be. But there's like enough of them. Like if you get Static Charge, you're happy with a Matter Maker. Matter Maker can oftentimes give you some efficiency that you wouldn't necessarily have. So it's definitely an interesting card, but ultimately it's going to end up being situational. Mutagenesis Researcher is a role player. This is like one of the few sources for damage enhancements in this set. Miasma Bomb, I think, being the other. I think that's it. You get it. Just all 4 of those icons are nice. Mutagenesis Researcher is totally fine. Mutagenesis Researcher was one of the best mutants for enhancements anyway in the previous set. It's crazy to me that they reprinted Mutagenesis Researcher in this set. And you still get access to that awesome spread of bonus pips. Officer's Blaster is a fine role player. It can set up some interesting board situations for you. It's not easy to get rid of for your opponent. They have to fight your creatures in the correct order for it to not just keep moving over. You could set up a chain reaction with this card. You could put it on a creature that you know is going to fight, and then it basically kind of works like Hadros Wall, where you're getting to pass it. As your creatures are trading up, smaller creature is fighting a creature that's bigger than them, with the bonus power and getting to move stuff. Espeon is a situational card from what we've seen. Often ends up being a discard because the effect is symmetrical. Now, the Evil Twin one's very interesting, because that's another symmetrical effect. As I don't know, I have no experience with this one, but this is one I would want to play against before I could give it a full rating. But I'm willing to bet it's still situational. So Evil Twin one, well, they're like this. Looks like a cat, sort of like a cat with antennas. It's got I think it's got its tongue sticking out there. Plasma Nozzle, role player. This card can do some damage. Splash damage is always nice because it's a good way to take out when you lower the tide. The player raises the tide during their turn, they may deal 3 damage. So it says during their turn, right? So if you like Bilge Warden and make your opponent raise the tide during your turn, then they don't get to do the damage. Because you have to raise the tide during your turn. So that is the condition that has to be met. So yeah. So that, I mean, that is something, right? That goes back to where like Bilge Warden's effect of raising the tide for your opponent during your turn. I think most of the effects are either, or we'll say, I think Hydra Cataloger is like the exception. But a lot of the effects are like, when a player raises the tide during their turn, do this thing. So, yeah. Now, Emeritus Carrying right here, this guy is a standout, in my opinion. He's like Diplomat Gung on but potentially better. He's got Deploy. You get to use one of his neighbors, and if the tide is out, you get to use the other neighbor. Justin had a play the other night where he played Professor Emeritus Carrying, used a creature to raise the tide. So he got to use the other creature. Carrying is just so good. Yeah, just very powerful effect. Triska is a standout, in my opinion. You might call her a role player, but I think she's a standout. The Evil Twin one, I think, is just the role player. But Triska enables some of the dumbest possible things in this set. If we go back and we look at Gross and Hings, if we go back and we look at any number of creatures that had reap effects, Triska enables all of them. This is another common that can generate immediate amber. So yeah, it's just so crazy. It's a good thing she doesn't. Yeah, it's a good thing it's only like her neighbor, right? So it does take some clever positioning with her to get full effect. But man, she's got a lot of upside that she can give. The earlier in the game you play her, the more value you can get from her too. So yeah. Sabotage Mission is a fine role player. Actually, I'm going to put this as situational. It's another one of those instances where you got to try to tax for the exact right amount to force the opponent to use all of the amber that they have, as opposed to it just being a miasma and stopping them for a turn. But it's something that lets you play around some effects. So yeah, I think Sabotage Mission is a solid card. But very situational. Kincan's a role player. He's been a fine card. I said that I thought he would get better as new sets were released. So I'm happy to report that Kincan's still kind of holding up. He's going to be better if your opponent has different houses than you, because his effect he's like a good like turn 2 or turn 3 play. He's not good on the first turn because your opponent won't necessarily have amber. A lot of times we'll avoid generating amber until they can kill him. But yeah, Kincan's is can be a very big a nuisance. It's also better if you don't have artifacts in your deck, because a lot of times what happens is you'll play an artifact from a house, and then that artifact will always be visible for the purposes of Kincan. Selective Preservation is a standout. This card is very good too. The fact that you can combine this with Grand Alliance Council, you've got decks that have got both. It's so hard for your opponent to know what to play, and because you're choosing the creatures of each power value, you just choose your creatures to live. This one is oftentimes even more one-sided than Grand Alliance Council can be. But there's a wide smattering of powers in this set, and it feels like the powers in different sets are inconsistent. So I'm willing to bet against other sets, Selective Preservation is probably worse. Like, it's probably worse against Worlds Collide because there's like some larger creatures in Worlds Collide than this set. And then like Coda could be another example, but it's still, I don't know, it's still good. I mean, it is. It doesn't change. I don't really know why either of these cards don't chain for starters. So yeah, just a incredible, powerful effect. Shield Geolator is a fine card. Evil Twin, same thing. I would give the edge to Shield Geolator Evil Twin because it can kill creatures with the minus power, loses all armor, and gets -2 power. Whereas the normal Shield Geolator gets +2 armor. Normal Shield Geolator makes a lot of creatures very difficult to kill in this set because there's not that much damage floating around. And then to top it all off, you slap 2 armor on something. So, in worst case, you play a 3 power 2 armor creature. That's not easy to remove in this set necessarily through damage and whatnot. So, yeah, it's a totally fine card. Static Collection Array is, I'm going to put this as situational. I think the better your deck is, the better this card is, better you are controlling the tide. A lot of times it can force your opponent into taking chains they don't want to take. But if your opponent is better at controlling the tide than you probably end up discarding this. So I think this is situational. Stunner's a role player. Oh yeah, Static Collection Array cross set's awesome. Yeah. Stunner is definitely situational. Teresa is a standout in my opinion. This is yet another Star Alliance card that can give you immediate amber. If we were to go through and we were to count the number of amber pips on cards and like the expected amber from cards in Star Alliance, the expected amber from cards that don't have amber pips is probably equal to the cards that have just amber pips on them. Cards that were giving you amber just for playing them. Teresa gives you amber. Triska gives you amber. Hawkins gives you amber. Gung gives you amber. Caring gives you amber. None of those are all creatures, right? So those are all cards that your opponent like has to do something about. Otherwise, they just keep giving you more amber, and they all have like immediate effects on the table, and that's why Star Alliance is crazy in this set, right? So. Love Teresa. Teresa is one of my favorite cards in this set. Technobabble is fine. It's a good role player. Ulfbert device. I don't think we actually got to. I don't think we've played with this, so I'm gonna chicken out and abstain from rating this. Each player cannot choose the same active house they chose on their previous turn. This like screws up my whole playstyle. I love trying to choose the same house multiple times in a row. But yeah, I think this can actually. I'm going to have to play with this card before I can rate this. So there you go. I'm going to mark this as incomplete right here. But I'm willing to bet, depending on the deck, this can be very good. Together is a standout. Crazy card in this set. You can play the first card to raise the tide and then play another non-Star Alliance card with it. It's just such a good card. It's phase shift, but possibly double. Yeah. Everything, just go back and listen to me gush about phase shift yesterday. Multiply it ×2. And that's together. Right? So, just this insane card. United Action is good. It's a good role player. It takes a little bit of setup to get maximum value, but still a very powerful card. It can do some crazy stuff. Unity of Discord is a role player because it really requires that you have specific cards to be crazy, but it's right on the edge of standout. Because this is another card that lets you generate amber that doesn't have an amber pip on it. That makes it very difficult to gauge how much amber you can generate in a turn. I think that's one of the greater strengths about Star Alliance, is that Star Alliance can go from having no amber to just threatening immediately out of seemingly nowhere with like just a handful of cards out of hand. So yeah, and Unity Discord is definitely one of those that is pretty good at generating a lot of amber out of nowhere. Universal Translator is a nice role player. Xenotraining is a role player. Z-Force Agent is a role player, the whole Z-Force package. We actually opened up several Z-Force agents. So we've actually gotten to play quite a bit with Z-Force in this set. We only had like maybe one of them in Mass Mutations, so we didn't get to play with it much. But honestly, I think it's probably better in this set because the removal's worse. So Z-Force is like better at sticking around. So yeah, and Unity or Discord is actually bonkers with Z-Force. Transporter Platform was probably better, but Unity or Discord can be like same turn. So yeah, Z-Force, a nice role player. These are all reprints, so I'll kind of like blow through those. And Zap is a nice role player as well. So Star Alliance is my favorite house in the set. I don't even think it's close. I don't even think it's controversial to say it's the best house. I think it's just the most consistent. How many cards did I give standout in that set? Or how many cards did I give standout in that house, right? Like, far more. I think I maybe said like 2 Sarian cards were standouts. And there were quite a few stretches there where I was just like multiple standouts in Star Alliance, right? So, all right, we're going to get to Unfathomable next. Abandoned Ship is a... this one is a standout, in my opinion. It's uncommon, but man, this card is a blowout if it hits at the right time. And the worst case scenario, it's like a better tempting offer. This is just like yet another reason why Sarians are very mad about the fishmen in this set. Because like imagine you spent hundreds of thousands of years as a dinosaur building a republic, and some stupid tentacle monster comes along and undoes all of your hard work, all that city-state interest that you put together, all that stuff. This card just like stops that in an instant. Abyssal Zealot's a nice role player. This is actually one of the best cards to combine with Bilge Warden that we talked about before, because Bilge Warden gives you an immediate release valve for Abyssal Zealot. One of the major issues I think with Unfathomable is that the uncommons in Unfathomable are very good, and we'll see that. And the commons, there's like a handful of commons that are all right, but the common creatures are very bad in Unfathomable. So if your whole deck was like Abandoned Ships and Abyssal Zealots, you would think that like Unfathomable was unbeatable. But as we'll go, we'll see what the rest of the commons in Unfathomable look like. So Illusions of Grandeur, yet another uncommon, yet another very good effect. This card is a standout. It's not Control the Weak. This is actually my favorite version of Control the Weak that's been printed so far, because it does not take the option away from you. You still have the option to give your opponent that 3 amber, right? At least you don't lose the game on the spot because you skipped a turn. You can give your opponent 3 amber. You can hate every second of it, but you at least get to take the turn that you've been planning to take for quite some time. Bubbles is a role player. I almost want to call him a standout, but I think he's a role player because it is a one-time effect. But this card is good, and you can play around it by discarding creatures, but yeah, a lot of times you just like need to put your creatures on the table anyway. So Brain Drain and Bubbles are kind of like a 1-2 punch. I think there's several cards in Unfathomable that get better the more copies of each of them that you have. Somewhere out there's going to be like a 3 Bubbles 3 Brain Drain deck that's just like a miserable to play against. Somebody at a Chainbound walks in, plops that deck down, and people 2 tables over are like whispering about that guy. They're like, that's that guy, that's that jerk, he keeps playing his Unfathomable deck. And it's like all the local players just like hate Unfathomable. They're like, oh, Unfathomable's broken, and it's just because he got like a very good like spread of Unfathomable. Both of these effects are Brain Drain gives you just a crazy amount of information. This is yet another card that I feel like crushes Sarian in this set, because I think this card also crushes game plans when you're trying to play 4 creatures and then hold on to something like, say, a Stampede, or you're trying to like set up a card, you chain yourself to try to set up a card, and your opponent brain drains you and they hit that card. Man, what a beating that is. Yeah, it's when your opponent's got brain drains, you're almost better off discarding. It's again possible to plan for stuff. You just wait for the brain drains to hit, and that's when you can start making plans. So the more proactive you are against, like, say, a brain drain, the better off you are, because brain drain doesn't affect the table. So yeah, brain drain is a standout still, though. Call the Void is an excellent role player, and yeah, it's common. So like these 3 commons are all pretty good in my opinion. Yeah, it's nice. Creature removal can also end up being a Amber control as well. I think one of the Unfathomable's greatest weaknesses in this set is his actual Amber control, because his Amber control is pretty bad in my opinion. Its Amber control is like stopping your opponent's creatures from reaping. So the action-based or Star Alliance decks just ignore that, right? They'll just get the value from the creatures immediately. So Corrode is a role player. It can kill a lot of stuff. It's got a wide net for things that it can catch things. Being able to kill an artifact is always nice. Destroying an upgrade, destroying creature with armor. Those are all effects that you're likely to hit. There's going to be something for this card to kill. So not a bad role player. Cup of Water is absolutely a niche card. It's at rare though, so I don't think you mind it as much. But this is a super niche card. This feels like a Mars uncommon from Coda, though. So, oh no. We've gone too deep. Dark Discovery. The Dark Discovery combo is a very solid role player. I think we only got to play with one deck that had Dark Discovery so far. So I don't have a ton of experience with it, but this is very good. It is not situational at all. I think it is something that you can work to set up. I think some decks are going to be better at using Dark Discovery than others, but yeah, I think the whole combo is good. Deep Priest Glibby. We talked about this in the Discord, but you get to use its effect the turn you play it. So this card is fine. I was looking at somebody on Twitter was doing some trivia on the Unfathomable, and it's like a fifth of the creatures in the set, of the Unfathomable creatures in the set, are beasts. So there's going to be decks where Deep Priest Glibby here feels pretty awful. But he does trigger when he is played. Because this is after you play an Aquan creature, exhaust an enemy creature, and he is an Aquan creature at least. So, yeah, still probably just a role player. It's got a big body. These are more combos for the Dark Discovery thing. So they're all included together, and these effects are actually solid because they're nice, like disruption package as well. Echo Pearl is a fine role player. It doesn't quite delete a creature, but most of the time, if you use this on a creature, you're not going to have to worry about it. Effigy of Melaruk is an absolutely niche card. If you are the person who, in IRL Keyforge, you get to pull off the Effigy of Melaruk Waste Not combo, take a picture of it, slap that on Twitter, slap it on Reddit, slap it on Facebook, put it everywhere, let people know that you did it. However, if you're not doing that, then this card is really bad. It's a 100 power creature, 100 armor. There might be some wacky stuff you can do with this in the future. Maybe there's some wacky stuff that you can do elsewhere, but man, this card is something. Yeah, not amazing. Flamegill Enforcers, both of these are role players. They've got, they're pretty big bodies. They've got some amber control, but it's not particularly like capture 3. That's a big amount to capture. But it's not like it doesn't feel that great, I guess. And your opponent has some control over whether he's allowed to actually use his action. I think this is an interesting creature, but ultimately it's kind of on the weak side, right? It's very reminiscent of the Sanctum creature that was enraged by mutants that could reap and like capture 2. That creature and this one are very similar. So I think the steel one is absolutely a better effect than capture 3. So the evil twin is definitely a better effect overall. Flash freeze is like situational. I'd hesitate to call it a role player because I think like this card is unlikely to do amazing things for you. There are cards that are better at tapping in Unfathomable than this one, and it's at rare. So yeah, I don't know about it. This card is fine, but I think most of the time it's just going to give you an amber pip, and you'll exhaust a handful of creatures. So yeah, it's fine. It's situational. Frigorific Rod is a role player. It's the icy manipulator. Turns off the treasures, by the way. So that's something to remember because the treasures have to be ready. So Justin did that to me the other day, where I had like several turns where I wanted to use Ruins of Archons, but he kept using Frigorific Rod to tap it down. So this like Flash Freeze and Frigorific, like compare the two. This is like you get to use this when you like multiple times, and this is like a once. It's an action, Fuguru, I'm going to put in the role player status. If he were bigger, I think he would be a standout. It's a lot like Succubus, or any number of other cards where your opponent just kills it. He's not like, he's not too hard to kill, so your opponent doesn't have to go out of their way to get him killed. But there's enough taunts in the set that sometimes you can protect him. So he's potentially more damaging in this set because of chains for the tide, right? So when you combine the hand reducing cards with your opponent having chains, his effect isn't dependent on the tide. So like I think he can compound situations on the board. Most of the time he's just going to die immediately though, because your opponent is like, well, nope, not gonna let him stick around. So Sherman is a situational card. We've seen him do some interesting things, but yeah, I think Sherman overall is a fine card. It certainly leads to interesting board states, I think. So yeah, definitely an interesting card, if not particularly great. So the Guiltspine Netcasters are nice role players. The capture icons can't be understated here. And I think the Reap and Exhausted creature is better than Ready and user-friendly non-Aquan creature. Because this stops your opponent from doing nasty stuff, and this requires that you have some other stuff to use. So both of those can get some value. The big problem with them is that they're 2-power creatures that don't have any kind of evasive or anything. They're not elusive. They don't have armor. They're easy pickings for fights. Hookmaster is an excellent role player. This card, we've seen Hookmaster destroy a lot of amber. It's definitely a creature that's got a lot of upside. So, very strong role player. Arid Simon. Both of these are role players. The evil twin one, I think, is interesting because of poison. and taunt, but the 2 power means that the 2 armor creatures in the set get to fight it for free. So I don't know. Just they're role players. Arid Simon honestly feels like a Coda creature. Right, this feels like it could have been an untamed creature in Coda. So yeah, not much to really say on these. These are fine. Sometimes they'll reap, and sometimes they get to kill creatures that are bigger than them. Calp, I think, is a standout. This is Ember Imp. This is any number of other cards that have to die immediately, or your opponent is just can get strangleholded. So yeah. Evil Twin one is interesting. I'll call it a role player. I haven't got to play with it, but very interesting card. Weird design space, but I'm for it. Yeah, I mean, being able to discard any number of cards from your hand, pretty potent, honestly. You can set up some interesting stuff. It doesn't say that you can't use more than one card, right? You can only play 1 card a turn. So if you have a board full of unfathomable stuff, this gives you a way to really take over a game. So yeah. Kilogog's Trench is an interesting card. I'm going to put this as situational. We've only played with it a handful of times, and then after a certain point in the game, it doesn't do anything anymore. So yeah, it's interesting but situational. Kira Guiltspine's a role player, not a particularly potent card, but yeah, I think it's fine. It's definitely annoying for your opponent to play around. I think Lack Gaboon here is actually pretty bad. So plus, I don't think we've played with this card yet. +1 power for each other exhausted creature. So that includes yours. There are 3 or more other exhausted creatures. It gains skirmish and hazard is 5. No, I'll put it at a role player, I guess. I don't know. I feel like there are going to be times where this card completely is like just explodes. It'll have some damage on it and then just explodes. Yeah, I don't even like. So, I feel like Lack Gaboon is missing a paired card. In another house that it like becomes obsessed with, right? If it wanted to be like a full homage, it feels like it needs like the person to become obsessed with from another house. You know, and I don't know. You could do something with that design space. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't know about it. The creature from the Black Lagoon was one of my favorite Universal horror monsters when I was like really young. So just because I thought it was like a really cool looking creature, it was like a fish man, but yeah, I think overall he's not particularly great. Maelstrom is an excellent role player. I hesitate to call it a standout because as the tournament has progressed, we have seen it do less and less impressive things. But there are absolutely board situations where Maelstrom is a teetotal blowout. I don't want to call it situational because I feel like the threat of Maelstrom forces your opponent to play in a specific way. So, yeah. And for some reason, this card gives chains, unlike all the Star Alliance board wipes, right? Omnipus is a role player. I hesitate to call Omnipus a standout. We've only gotten to play with like 3 tentacle Omnipus decks. If there are Omnipus decks that have more tentacles, then maybe this card is better. But from my experience with it, I've missed a lot of tentacles playing this and trying to hit some tentacles. So I think it is better the later in the game that you play it. So if Omnipus is printed in sets moving forward, which I hope it is, then I think there's probably some really cool stuff that could happen with this card. So, but otherwise, I think it's mostly just a role player. Photic Raider is a role player. Not particularly a great card in my opinion, because it's easy for your opponent to deal with it when they want to, because of the capture there, right? So yeah, not my favorite card in the set, but it can come down and stop a key strategically. Portal Monger's a fine role player. You know, a card that can maybe delay your key. Like I said before, taxing keys by more is typically bad, because it just stops your opponent from forging, then they answer your tax, and then they forge for the 6. And so the game ends pretty quickly after the tax is dealt with. So very rarely do you actually get to force them to pay the full 4. If you do, you probably won that game, or their deck was on some crazy stuff. So yeah, Portal Margo is like a fine card. I don't really. Plus, I don't think it works against what's that card? Tide Warp, right? I think Tide Warp totally turns off Portal Monger, because they start their turn, they get control of the tide. Portal Monger's blank, so I don't know. That's an interaction that I could foresee somebody losing to at a Vault Tour at like a really important moment. Your opponent plays Tide Warp, the other person plays Portal Monger, trying to stop the key, and then like the Tide Warp takes it back. So Portal is very good. It's a good role player. It's better the more copies of it that you have, and the better your deck is at controlling the tide, the better Portal gets. So very, very strong card in my opinion. Doesn't quite do enough for it to be a standout, but it's good. Rakuzel's Chance, a role player. It's a combo piece with Sleep with the Fishes, which we'll cover here in a second. But it can tap all of your own creatures, so it does take a little bit of sequencing. Rust Miser is a very situational card. It doesn't affect your artifacts, but it's very unlikely to actually do anything. So yeah, I mean, it's at least a 5 power body. That I think I've used that justification to move cards into the role player status in the past, but I'm going to say Rust Miser is situational. Siphos is a role player. Hazardous 4 means it's kind of a pain to fight with. And they've got some recursion ability on it, which is kind of nice. This is like a good, it's not quite the same thing as the Logos creatures that could repair themselves in Worlds Collide, that were just very hard to get rid of, reassembling automaton and whatnot. Siphos is not quite on that caliber, but still can do some stuff. There's probably someone out there who's got an enhanced Siphos with like some card draw icons on it, and they probably get to do some fun nutty stuff. But other than that, I can't really foresee like Siphos doing a whole lot other than that. So Seabringer Krakoa is a solid role player. This is yet another one of those very annoying taunt creatures. It's got a downside if your opponent destroys it. So yeah, I would. It's just very. It's so annoying. Yeah. This is a good card. I think the more Seabringer Krakoas your Unfoundable deck has, the happier you are. So. Sink or Swim is a nice role player. The discarding the card is typically more useful than the tapping the creatures, but being able to exhaust creatures is always nice. Definitely one of the more powerful modal effects as far as like versatility wise, as far as control. So, Sleep with the Fishes, I'd consider this a situational, because it will destroy your own creatures. So when you do combine it with, say, Rakuzel's Chant, you've got to do some stuff to get it to to not annihilate a bunch of your own creatures, but it is a nice way to catch back up. Soapbox Thingamabob, excellent role player. I actually, this is situational because it only works like twice a game. But we have seen this card do good things. Majority of the time, it's just sitting there doing nothing. But being able to forge a key, or like when your opponent forges the key, tapping down all of their board, very powerful. This like helps you get back into a game that you might have been losing to an active board. So situational but powerful. Spark Fist, I'm gonna put him into the situational category. Haven't really seen Spark Fist really do a whole lot that we've seen in this set. It's a very potent effect, and 2 power skirmish is nice, but really haven't had a chance to see Spark Fist like take over a game. Fight effects rarely take over a game anyway, so I think this card is situational. Storm Surge is a role player. Definitely very annoying, and we've forgotten Storm Surge I don't know how many times. This is like one of those cards that like at a vault tour I would play Storm Surge and I would just put it in the middle of the opponent's table until the end of their turn so that we wouldn't forget about it, right? Because it's just like, how many times have we forgotten about it? How many times do we have to get reminded that Storm Surge happened? So it's just ingrained in your nature to untap everything at this point. Taniwa, I don't think we've actually gotten to play with Taniwas. I don't know if we opened any Taniwas. Probably just a role player though. 8-2 is a big stat line. Putting a creature from your discard pile on top of your deck is interesting. Yeah, I think these are role players, not amazing on their own. But they can maybe do some stuff, provided things go right. Destroying a friendly creature. There's actually some stuff you do want to kill, right? You could kill Brend, you could kill Siphos. Interesting card, but not one that I haven't really any experience with. Big follows. Somebody ban that. I don't think I can actually ban from where I'm at right now. The Tawiki Kraken here is a niche card. I think we got it on the table one time. So yeah, not a big, not. I love giant dumb creatures in this game, and I hate the hoops that I have to jump through to get them into play. And the Tawiki Kraken is right in that category. It's worse Khalifi Dragon in my opinion. It is worse. It's worth big guys from mass mutations, the gigantic creatures. There's a lot of yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this card. It's just very difficult to play. Absolutely niche. Technically, it's part of the Omnipus package. Totally a fine card because you're not playing you're not like, it's not like you can have Tentaclid and no Omnipus, right? So Thalassophobia is an interesting card. One we only have like a little bit of experience with, but man, this card can certainly mill the wrong stuff at the wrong time, and you'll just lose a game. I remember distinctly losing to Justin playing Thalassophobia and it milling all of the cards I needed to answer what was going on. So yeah, I'll call this card situational for now because there are decks you don't want to mill, and then there are but there are times where you're going to play this card and it's going to mill the exact card the opponent needs, and you're going to lose. So yeah. The Chosen One is a standout in my opinion. This is a card that just warps the game around it because you just don't get to have creatures while this is on the table. You got to find some way to get rid of this if you want to use your creatures. I think the Chosen One is one of the more powerful unfathomable rares, and just one of the more powerful unfathomable creatures in general. So the Susurrus is fine. It's probably situational. A lot of your unfathomable creatures are tapping opponent's creatures anyway, so this at least is a trade up in value. You can use this as an enabler for some other things, but yeah, overall, I've talked about how much I dislike the ships. So Thundertoe's good. It's definitely a role player. It can set up. A lot of times it can set up some stuff. It does require some sequencing on your part so that you don't kill a bunch of your own creatures. But yeah, it's a fine card. It does a pretty good job. Tidal Wave is a role player. Don't quite want to call it a standout because it does give your opponent the tide back. But yeah, destroying 3 creatures with 1 card, pretty potent. So Tomwa, I like Tomwa a lot. I think you can it's another uncommon unfathomable creature, and it's a positive reap effect. So I like this one a lot. I think there's going to be some decks that have like a couple of multiples of these, and you get to do some crazy things, especially when you combine it with some of the other tapping. And you can just take a bunch of unfathomable turns in a row because you're going to be drawing a lot of cards. And by the time your opponent is finally dealt with your unfathomable stuff, then you've got a grip full of cards. So they're going to deal with that next. So I think Tomwa's got a lot of like snowball potential, where it can just take an opponent that was falling slowly behind and just you cascade a game to win. The exhausting creature opponent discards a card at random from their hand. That's not bad either. I think I'd give the regular one a higher grade than this one. But I think they're both fine role players. Under Pressure is a nice role player. It's a lot like Containment Field in that your opponent can get like one last use out of the creature, and then it's kind of gone for a while. But it still puts the ball in the opponent's court. They can still decide when they get that last use, so they can maximize effect for it. Velucanth is a standout in my opinion. We have played a lot of games where Velucanth just kind of takes over the table because he's so disproportionate. He affects the table so disproportionately. So yeah, he can just it's a good card in my opinion. He can deal with up to 4 creatures in a turn, right? You can fight something and then exhaust a creature and its neighbors. Just really good stuff. And so yeah, just very, very potent. The Voice of Recusal here is situational. I'm pretty sure I lost a game the other day because of this card, because Justin was able to take effect or gain the effect from it. That I don't know why it's symmetrical. I don't know why it's symmetrical. I guess just because they wanted to mess around with the tide mechanic in this set. So yeah. And when Justin was playing the deck that had him, he discarded it, and I think he won those games. And then I played the deck that had this in it, and I lost the game. And I'm results oriented, so yeah, I think this guy's only situational. I'm gonna give Whirlpool honorary standout status. Welcome back, Jedi. I'm gonna give Whirlpool honorary standout status just because this card is so fun. This is the most Keyforge card in the set, in my opinion. It's obviously better in decks that have ways to capture, because you can give that amber to your, or you give that creature that's captured amber to your opponent. Or if you're exalting in multiple different ways, you get to do some fun stuff. Whirlpool is is the card that I think we've had some of the most fun, wacky games with in the set. So that's worth standout status in its own right. Wakolia is a role player. Compare this card to Reader Gallum to give you an idea of where the creature power level in the game has gone, right? Reader Gallum or Garcia in this card, like poor Wakolia. This is a card that would have looked great in AOA, but man, in this set, this card looks kind of pathetic. It still serves a purpose. It's just really easy to kill, and yeah, I don't know if we've successfully taxed with Wakolia yet. So, Evil Twin one here. This is confounding. I think the Evil Twin is just strictly worse than the regular one. Yeah, just strictly worse. Exalting to make your keys cost +4. See previous notes on taxing for too much. Wrath of Ruin is a great card. Destroying a creature, returning 2 new creatures to the owner's hand. Just very good. lots of versatility there. So yeah, that's a good card. All right, so that brings us to the end of Unfathomable. Unfathomable, I think is one of the weaker houses in the set overall, but positioned well in the set versus itself. So I think Unfathomable versus other sets is going to feel bad. Unfathomable versus Dark Tidings, mid-level decks, feels good. Unfathomable versus Dark Tidings, high-level decks, feels bad. Okay? So that's why I have to, like, grade Unfathomable as if they're slightly weaker than they look, because they are worse against the better decks in the set, if that makes sense. If you're playing against the good decks and your cards are not great, then it feels bad. And if you're playing against decks that were already bad and your cards feel insane, that those are just win more cards. So yeah, I think one of the big things with Unfathomable is that if the game gets away from you, Unfathomable has a real hard time catching back up. Whereas if you stay in control the whole game, Unfathomable feels brutally unfair. And I think that's why Star Alliance is so good in this set, because you can get so much immediate value from your hand versus an Unfathomable deck. The Unfathomable deck's like, hey, no, wait, it's like, I tapped all your creatures, you weren't supposed to be able to use creatures, and Star Alliance is like, I'm sorry, no, I didn't care about that, I just am going to play a bunch of cards and generate a bunch of amber, and then also I'm going to go on Grand Alliance Council, and then I'm going to together, I'm going to do this. So yeah, exactly. You gotta have stuff on the board to cascade into. So Unfathomable is good against other Unfathomable, right? You just and it's like whoever has the initiative, whoever was the person who struck first with Unfathomable, feels like they just are in a dominating position the whole time. So yeah, there you go. That's Unfathomable. Bringing it home with Untamed. I'm going to try to speed through this as fast as possible. I am a little bit over on time. I'm doing better than I was last night, but I'm not on pace to finish at the right time. So, All Tied Up is a standout in my opinion. This card is very good. You are always playing it. It's just generate amber, give you the tide. Sometimes it gives you more amber. Great. Awesome. Assert Dominance is a nice role player. This is a nice way to remove stuff that had been a problem for you. And it combos well with creatures from other houses. So like Sarian and Sanctum both really like this card. Amberfin Shark is a fun card. I'm going to put this at role player status. It's got a symmetrical effect. The Evil Twin one. The Evil Twin one is interesting. Each player loses one and give him a +1/+1 counter for each amber lost this way. Oh, okay. That's actually, I think the Evil Twin one's kind of cool too. I like both of these cards. We had the deck that we dubbed the Amberfin Shark deck because it was like Amberfin Shark and like 2 Witch of the Dawns to bring it back, and I think there was an Ambermancer too. There were a lot of ways to put like extra +1/+1 counters on it. I think there was a Growth Surge. Just it's just stuff like that. Amberfin Shark is a nice like way to benefit the +1 counters in the set. So yeah, this is a fun role player status. I haven't had a chance to play with the Evil Twin one though, so can't really judge it. But I assume it's kind of similar, especially if you're generating more amber than your opponent. You don't mind losing one. At this point, Amberfin Shark turns into a what was it? Was it Snaffles? Shuffles? What was the imp? It turns into that imp, Shaffles, I believe. Shaffles, and it gets bigger, so it's like harder to get rid of. So, Ambermancy is awesome role player. This is like the culmination of the +1 counter theme here. I'm kind of sad it's locked behind uncommon. But this feels like a pretty good balance reason. This is probably why it's at uncommon. If this card were at common, Untamed would be absolutely disgusting in this set. It's already really good. Beach Day is a nice role player. You could argue that this is a standout because it bounces and it has a potential to gain you more amber. Just a good card all around. Blossom Drake is a nice situational card. It's not going to be good in every matchup. Some decks, Blossom Drake could hurt you. The combo, the Fafalde Bombix and forget the last one, Chenille. I really enjoy these. These are nice role players. The fact that you gain amber for just playing them, there's a lot of upside to these cards. They're just fun. I talked about them on Call of Discovery, but this feels like a better version of the Igon the Terrible combo. So, Bumblebird is niche. Sorry, Bumblebird. I hate to do it to you. But yeah, Bumblebird has been one of the worst cards in the game for quite some time. So, but this is the set where Bumblebird has the highest upside because of Ambermancy and cards like Amberfin Shark, right? So, there's somebody out there is going to have an awesome Bumblebird deck. And so, yeah, there you go. This is the best set for Bumblebird. It's still not a great card. That's why it goes in the niche category. Chelonia is a standout. Hunting Witch, if it were elusive. Ugh. In a set that has lots of ways to buff it. Both of these cards are standouts. The Evil Twin Chelonia, we saw Evil Twin Chelonia absolutely dominate the game the other night. Because it wasn't answered. And it just kept making the opponent lose. It destroyed 10 amber that game. So, both these cards, very powerful. Chenille, part of the combo we talked about before. Chonkers, situational. I didn't realize you have to actually destroy a creature with Chonkers. But situational. But once again, probably better in this set than it was in other sets. So, it's good to have cards like Chonkers. So, people like Mortivis can make a personal quest to do absurd things with it, right? Just to see how big they could get it. You could probably do better in this set than you could in Mass Mutations even. So, because you've got cards like Assert Dominance that let you use your Chonkers the same turn that you play it. So you could probably get to do some fun things with Chonkers in this set. Created Nature is a bizarre situational card. The nice thing about it is Omni. To this day, I still don't understand what the purpose of this card is and why it's rare. Like, I would rather have Assert Dominance than this. So, you don't even have Tentadlin. Tentadlin was, like, an awesome card to go with this, because Tentadlin had Assault 9, and you could, like, absolutely blow creatures up with it. I don't know, it's just a bizarre situational card. Cross Porpoises is a standout, crazy card. Raise the Tide, Enrage 2... It's just, like, all of the Untamed stuff that raises the tide has, like, all these extra bonuses on it. So, yeah, like, the other houses had to, like, choose between raising the tide or getting some other effect, and Untamed just gets it all. So, Deepwater Gruin is a standout. What if Dust Pixie, but 5 power? Crazy. It's insane. It's that common. It combines with Chelonia. These are just, like, so much amber right here. This is like Coda Untamed potential burst in this set, but better, in my opinion, because the support pieces around it are better. Dredging Druid, I think we had one of these. I haven't really had a chance to play with it. The time is high, I put up to 3 creatures from your discard pile on top of your deck. Put up to 3. That's a role player card right there, maybe situational. The 2 power and elusive. Elusive is a nice capper, a nice, like, way to try to keep it alive, and there's probably a lot of upside to that. So yeah. Eldest Bear is a role player. Fangtooth, in this set, Fangtooth feels like a role player and not a standout. It was standout in previous sets. But in this set, it feels more of a role player. So Fertility Chant is a role player. There's no Infernus in this set, so it doesn't feel nearly as bad as it did in some of the other ones, right? So definitely a strong card. I hesitate to call it a standout. This does give your opponent Amber. So Fafalde rounding out the trio that we saw before. Flumph is a role player, still on the weaker side, but combines with the +1/+1 counters are more relevant than ever. So didn't even realize that Fuzzy Grun was in the set. So yeah, I wonder if there's like a triple deep water double Fuzzy Grun deck out there that just wins the game on like turn 4. Gabuk is a role player. He's an interesting card. He's better in this set because you don't have the enhancement icons, right? Like if he, I think he was in Mass Mutation. Maybe he was in Mass Mutations. No, it was in Worlds Collide, but you don't get the play effects and you don't get Amber bonuses. So, Gabuk is better if you're like Sanctum, sometimes Sarian. Gabuk does combine with Fafalde because you just like get to put them directly into play, ignoring the play effects. So, Gabuk can counter some of Unfathomable's effects. I mean, like specifically which effects? Oh, like the fact that they put stuff on top of your deck. Yeah, that's interesting. You could choose to like trade in your Gabuk so that you can like put a creature into play. Like versus yeah, it's something there. I still think that Theory Conjecture is going to be better, or at least more reliable because it's an action. But yeah, Gabuk's an interesting card. I'm not mad at cards like Gabuk, especially since they're like uncommon. So you're not going to have a deck that has like 4 of them in it. And you're just kind of like scratching your head the whole like Gabuk is dying and putting like another Gabuk into play. Sometimes it's got some upside versus board wipes, but the board wipes are so conditional in this set, and a lot of the board wipes don't, like Maelstrom, for instance. Gabuk doesn't do anything versus Maelstrom. He just goes back on top of the deck with the rest of your creatures. So, yeah, it's an interesting card. I'll put it in the role player status because it's at least big. Genetic Drift is a role player, combines a lot of the other plus some counter stuff that we've seen. At uncommon, you're not as likely to have it or have like multiples of it. But there's a lot of the +1 counter stuff throughout all of the rarities. So, most of the time this is going to have at least one other card that you get some +1 counters from. Because otherwise it's just give a creature two +1 counters. And it also affects your opponent's creatures. So sometimes you're encouraged to make sure your opponent's creatures are killed. So we got Growth Surge here. This card has been pretty good ever since it was printed. I think it's still fine. It's still better in this set because of all the other synergies. Infighting is a nice role player. It forces the opponent to play around it or get punished. So, playing your creatures so that they don't die to infighting is a nice skill to develop in this set. So I think it serves a nice role there. Instrument Silence is a role player. Skirmish and Fight gain 1 is nice. That's just very synergistic. So yeah, it's a totally fine card. Kangafant is a situational card. There's a lot of times you don't want to play this because your own creatures are dying. The best thing about Kangafant, since he's been printed, is that you can always just reap with Kangafant and have him blow himself up so that you can go reap with the rest of your untamed creatures. So I never feel bad about playing a Kangafant and a bunch of other untamed creatures at the same time, because you can always just reap with him first so that you don't have to sack off the rest of your board. So I like Kangafant. It's a very interesting card, and obviously it combines with Keyfrog, which is the next one. Keyfrog is a role player. Keyfrog is probably my favorite designed key cheat in the game, because it's just a wild card. You can do some crazy things with it. So Lupo is a role player, just a big creature that likes to fight for the board, and is pretty good at it. Malyamok is a role player. There aren't nearly as good artifacts in this set as the previous set, like we've seen before, but the ability to have The ability to get rid of an artifact is always welcome in a deck. Moogling is a standout in my opinion. Really combines the +1 counters in this set. And the Evil Twin one is a situational card, whereas the regular one is definitely a standout. You can scale his power with some other cards in the set so that you can like force the opponent to pay the exact amount of amber that they have, and blow all that amber up at the same time. So Mushroom Man's a role player, one of the best waste not targets in the set, at least early in the game. And in Untamed, there's a lot of good waste not targets in Sarian, but Mushroom Man is a good Untamed target for it. So and he's a big creature that gets smaller as the game goes on. So Mushroom Man has always been a favorite on our channel because we've talked about how hideous and disgusting he is. And we've locked Mushroom Man into the tier 2 status. Oh yeah, he's tier 2. So only a handful of TTR fans are allowed to use the Hallowed Mushroom Man emote. So but yeah, he's terrifying if you ever go back and actually look close at him. So Meliobi's a solid role player. It's definitely a card. Comparing this card to like Snufflegator, which is another favorite of TTR, that this card like absolutely shames Snufflegator in its versatility. But I think this is about the appropriate power level for a card designed to fight at 4 power. It needs a trigger effect for it to gain skirmish, and then it also punishes your opponent for having smaller creatures because you get to enrage them and then they don't really want to fight. So yeah, it's Meliobi is a solid role player in the set. Old Patty and his Evil Twin are both role players. Old Patty's got some upside. Obviously combines with Chelonia pretty well. But I think the other night when we were playing Old Patty, he milled exclusively actions and artifacts. So yeah, buyer beware with Old Patty. I think people have said that Old Patty doesn't feel like he's got a Fisher type. What is this? I didn't notice this before. The trait Fisher. So we can hit him with the discard that purges based off of traits. We can say trait Fisher. So yeah. I don't know, whatever. Anytime you look through a Keyforge set, you notice something new, right? Anyway, he's a fine role player. He's got a big body and he's got some upside. Obviously combines very well with Chelonia. So, and ways to play creatures from other houses during is always nice, because that makes like your next turn potentially better. Persistent Hunting is a strong role player. Pester Grove, we've only played with this a couple of times. This feels like a situational card, because some decks are going to be better with it than others. It might be in the wrong. You could have the wrong type of deck for this. The nice thing is that Untamed's actually not that bad at fighting for the board this time around. It's got like some pretty large creatures. And with the ability to generate +1 counters, then you can generate larger creatures. So you might be better at fighting the opponent. So yeah, I feel like a Pester Grove deck with Unfathomable could make for a very like frustrating deck to play against if you want to use your creatures. So yeah. Prana Monkeys is a nice role player. Prana Monkeys has been around for a while. So yeah, Crystal Hive's got a Pester Grove. That's cool. Yeah, link that in our Discord. I'd love to check out that Pester Grove deck. It's like I said, I think we only have 1 or 2 decks that have it. So we don't have like a ton of experience with it. But I could see it being a very powerful card. Primal Relic is a role player. It does turned the game into an arms race, which is fun. So yeah, I like the Primal Relic more than a lot of the other treasures because it rewards competition for the board, and I just like it when Keyforge focuses more on board competition. So, Punctuated Equilibrium is a standout card in my opinion. It always has been since it was printed originally. I do not understand why they keep printing this card. It just makes the existence of more and possibly more dumb decks to exist. It's just a crazy card. You spend a couple turns crafting your hand. Your opponent plays Punctuated Equilibrium, discards your hand. You know, like, it's just so frustrating to play against. But honestly, the upside for Punctuated Equilibrium is usually pretty small. It's better as a disruption tool than it is as like a combo piece, from what we've seen. So yeah, I think the fact that it exists in this set with Phase Shift and with Together means that you can actually do some pretty insane things. Somebody out there has got a Together punctuated Equilibrium deck where you can like play Together to play Punctuated Equilibrium to discard your hand and draw 6, and then use the second half of Together to play another card, right? So you could have some very explosive Star Alliance turns, or Logos with Punctuated Equilibrium, where you're gonna do some Martian Generosity-esque things with the amount of cards that you'll get to go through in your deck. Reaper Sow is a very strong role player card. The both of effects are actually pretty potent. The giving the power counters is actually pretty potent as well, because you can use it against your opponent's creatures. You can put the +1/+1 counters on your opponent's creatures to kill them with infighting more effectively, which I think is a very sneaky thing to do. So, Ritual Balance is a role player. Having this in play makes it difficult for your opponent to play around. So, always a strong card to have hanging around. Hello, how's it going? Ritual of Life is a I guess a situational card. I think it can combo some powerful stuff. I think we only had one deck that had this in it. So I don't know if I've got like a ton of experience with this card, but I could see this card being good. But it's really going to be deck dependent. Being able to blow up, say, like a Cyphos to get back like a Witch of the Dawn, so that you can get back another creature. I think that's all like pretty good. If you've got a creature that's particularly key to your game plan, this works well with a lot of like the combo creatures like Gross and Hings. That way your opponent can't just kill one of them. You've got a chance to get them back so that the effects can work. So yeah, something to this card's got a lot of combo potential, but it's really going to depend on your deck. So all right, Spore Gorger and the Evil Twin are both definite role players in this set. They give Untamed quite a bit of a ways to do some AoE damage. This is not something Untamed has had a lot of recently. I think They're Everywhere in AoA was probably the best example. But some of the other stuff that Untamed was doing in the other sets, its removal was kind of bad. So Spore Gorger, we've gotten to combine Spore Gorger to kill some Key Frogs. So, you know, that means, you know, it's a pretty good way to kill your Key Frog, especially if you've got like the Reaper Sow, or other ways to put +1/+1 counters on it. It just annihilates Shadow's creatures in this set. So Spore Gorgers are solid cards. The Spore Gorger Evil Twin is probably better in the mirror than the regular one is, right? So Okay, Stampede is a situational card. Very unlikely to ever actually work. However, if you do manage to land this, it's going to do something pretty awesome, but it's just not easy to pull off. Fittest is a nice role player in the set. The Mysticeti, I'm going to put at niche. This is probably the worst of the ships, in my opinion. You really need Waste Not for this card to feel like it's going to do anything. So, yeah. Thin the Herd is crazy good. I don't know if you saw the game we played the other night where Thin the Herd was just absolutely crushing. Yeah, this card. Oof. Oof. It's like Lost in the Woods, but what if you hit 4 of your opponent's creatures? Card is an absolute beating. So this is a standout in my opinion. Washed Away is a role player. Because it raises the tide. So yeah, just yet another way for Untamed to raise the tide. Waste Not, incredible card, but I will put it in the role player status. It's get the same problem as Punctuated Equilibrium, where oftentimes you'll draw 5 cards and like one of them were Untamed. There's going to be some Waste Not decks that are absolutely degenerate out there. I hesitate to call it a standout because I think the deck needs to have certain thresholds of like speed and efficiency for Waste Not to really click. If this is your only card draw on the deck, then Waste Not does not feel that great. But if you got other ways to archive and you got ways to buff creature powers and you get to do wacky stuff, then Waste Not feels really good. So yeah, oftentimes you're giving up one of your best creatures to do something. So a creature so if you're behind on the board and you just destroyed like an 11 power creature to draw a bunch of cards and you didn't hit an answer, you feel kind of bad, because you needed that creature to do some fighting for you moving forward. So Way the Pixie is a role player card. It's got some Star Alliance potential with like Light of the Archons and stuff like that, but otherwise, it's just, yeah, if you get an Amber off of it, you're doing good. Witch of the Dawn is a standout. Just incredible. Pulling any creature back, it's like regrowth, but also on a body. The more Witch of the Dawns that you have in a deck, the better, because they can just like chain each other. They just keep bringing each other back from the discard pile. You can populate a table from but just out of nowhere, oftentimes. So. And the Evil Twin Witch of the Dawn is one of the best Evil Twins in the game. Absolutely crazy card. I don't think we got to play with this card, but just read it. Destroy another friendly creature. If you do, play a different creature from your discard pile ready and use that creature. Insane. You get it. Not only exhumes, but you get immediate value from that creature. There's going to be some bonkers Dark Tidings decks and Archon. They're going to be Evil Twin based, and they're going to have Witch of the Dawn in them, and they're going to do some things that just feel absolutely disgusting. So, no, neither of which, yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, that's just a gross card. Yeah. Destroying another creature isn't necessarily a downside, as we've talked about, right? Like, imagine you've got Brend in your deck, and you play Evil Twin Witch of the Dawn. I'll destroy my Brend, and then put, like, I don't know, something on the... imagine the Evil Twin Hobnobber. Your opponent's at 4 Amber. You destroy Brend, steal 3, bring Hobnobber, Evil Twin into play, use it, steal that last one, right? So, like, there's just a huge swing potentials with this card. And that's obviously like a cherry-picked example, but I think, just getting immediate value from a creature that because oftentimes your opponent wanted that creature dead, right? They went out of their way to kill that creature, and then you got to put it into play and use it immediately. So I could see it combining with Tomwell the Glow. I guess it would have to combine with the Evil Twin version, but yeah, a lot of stuff that this could work with. So Word of Returning is a situational card. Can be very good versus Sarians. Otherwise, feels kind of slack. It's fine versus Sanctum. World Tree is a situational card. World Tree has been a card that's been around for a while. One of my favorite decks that we have not played on stream in quite some time. I haven't actually had a chance to touch this deck in forever. The Alarmed Charlatan of the Zoo has World Tree in it. And the dream is to World Tree the Time Traveler that's in the deck. But in practice, the World Tree doesn't really get to do much because the deck is just so much better at being like, it's got a lot of like Lost in the Woods. So you're like using Lost in the Woods to put the Time Traveler back in the deck that way, ideally. So yeah, World Tree is a very situational card. You might be able to set up something big with it. So, all right, rounding it out, we've got Youngest Bears, who I think are the definition of role players. The fact that you've got so many, the fact that you have Reap and Sow in the house at common to go with Youngest Bear at common, I think is why Youngest Bear is fine. There's going to be other sets where Youngest Bear would probably feel worse. Just look at it. Look how adorable this guy is. Look at this. He's got all that honey on him. What's that? What are you gonna do with all that? Look, you can't eat all that. So yeah, he's got some bone birds back there. It's just a just a goofy cute looking. And what is this? Ah, Youngest Bear, the evil twin one. He's horrifying. He's eating a bumblebird. Yeah. So this one I think is probably worse than the Reap one, because this is a proactive ability and this is like a reactive one, but getting effects for reaping is always nice. It felt like in mass mutations there were just far fewer effects for reaping. Reaping was like its own, you just like, a lot of your creatures were blank because they gave you enhancements, so reaping was just something you did with your creatures to try to close out a game. Whereas in Dark Tidings, reaping, there's a lot of decks that want to reap with creatures to actually win the game. That's their primary source of amber generation. So these at least have upside for getting to use them. If they're a little bit weak, they can be fought off the table pretty easily. I think I would rank Untamed second overall in houses because of the burst potential. And if we go back and we look through the commons in Untamed are very good, and the uncommons are particularly good as well. So I think you'll end up with like some anti-synergistic decks, because you'll have like some of the +1 counter stuff, but like no real ways to take advantage of them. But I think there are also some crazy fast Untamed decks. And since you've got Waste Not and Punctuated Equilibrium, you've actually got some wacky efficiency in this house where you can end up drawing a lot of cards. A nice thing about Punctuated Equilibrium, I'll point out, is that since it draws cards as if it was the draw card step, it does get rid of a chain for you when you play this card if you had to take chains for the tide. So Punctuated Equilibrium is a good way to get around the tide stuff in general. So yeah, that is Untamed. And that is the set review. So, in summary, I believe I had Star Alliance as the best house, followed closely by Untamed, followed by Logos. Then Sanctum, Shadows, Unfallible, Sarian. More or less that order. That is on average, not potential, because I do think there's probably potential for just an absolutely disgusting Sarian. But it's going to take a miracle collection of cards for that deck to be good. But I think it's like insane. You've got some Medica's Legacy, you've got some Imperial Forges, and you do some disgusting degenerate stuff, and you win. Yeah, so there you go. That is the review. Thank everybody. Thank you for coming out these last 2 nights while Justin was missing in action. I am not going to promise that we're going to do these for every set. This was just like some filler content. But I think these went pretty well. This is kind of fun. It's like fun to go through and brain through a lot of this stuff, and we got to see exactly how many cards we hadn't played with. I want to say it was less than 15 total cards, mostly evil twins, right? So just to give you an idea of how rare evil twins were. So yeah, I hope everybody got some valuable information from that. Once again, I am legally obligated to say that the music we listened to before the stream started was some League of Legends soundtrack that is DMCA free. I'm going to close you out with another one of those songs. Justin and I will return Wednesday. Eddie will be available to be given treats on Wednesday. So think of going to the Keyforge live event, even though you play Keyforge in a while, I say go for it. That is this weekend. I mean, obviously, if you're going to it, you would have made plans for it by it now. But I hope everybody has fun at that. I hope it ends up being a great event. It's basically a vault tour without being a vault tour. There seems to be a decent amount of support for it. If there hadn't been so much job uncertainty, I would have loved to have tried to make plans for it. But yeah, ultimately I ended up losing my job, so yeah, I just couldn't justify going on a Keyforge trip with all of that looming. Yeah, but I hope that it ends up being a great event for everybody. I hope everybody has fun there. So, I mean, they wanted us to come. We were approached about going to it. We couldn't schedule. Like I just can't see going to it with the job stuff here. It's not about money at that point, right? Like I don't know what my schedule is going to look like. So yeah. So I want to, hopefully the vault tour. So because the vault tours have world invitation implications, and that's the thing about Keyforge Lives, it's not a vault tour. It's like a big it's like a fan made event. If it were a vault tour, that way I would put like more consideration to go to, because it's got world invitation implications, because like the people who are highest rated on the vault tour board get invites and stuff like that, so that I think I could justify going to, even with all the uncertainty surrounding my employment status. So when it was announced that there was like a good chance that I was going to lose my job, and I just can't like try to schedule anything around that. Now, I probably could have ended up getting to it if I was like really set on it. And I was still slightly worried about COVID. When they announced that COVID was at a low, but now it's kind of like ramping back up in a couple of places. Our state's like rolling 7-day average is like 200 cases higher than it was a month ago. So it's certainly a concern. I was hearing that like 10% of the people, they get various places around the country. So a lot of the people that are in hospitals are people who got the vaccine. And it's because they can't give it to other people necessarily, but they still ended up hospitalized with it. So that's not like great. It's still extra risk, you have to assume. So yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I hope the everybody who goes, I hope everybody who goes has a lot of fun. It would be great to play in a live Keyforge event again. I think that is I want to sit at those huge tables, right? You get 20 people sitting in a line of tables all playing Keyforge. You're seeing various people throughout the day. You're playing. You see people who you played in the previous round. How you doing? Did you win the last game? Did you lose the last game? You get to talk like what kind of bad beat did you get? What insane combo did you pull off? That's fun to do. So something I've absolutely missed talking about. Just as the day progresses, live tweeting the results as you go. So All right, I have rambled enough. So, it was good talking to everybody throughout the night. Once again, another thank you for everybody who stopped by for the review. I am out of here. So, as soon as I can figure out all of this stuff, and close it out, there's some music for you. And the stream is ending. Goodbye.